Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow Husky Harry huggable homos and friends, we bring movie reviews to you from either current films or classic films, or sometimes, like this episode, a mixture of both. We've got two things coming at you on this episode. One is a celebration of the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. Boy, that
Mm-hmm.
makes me feel old knowing that movie is 40 years old, but we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to be wrapping up our South by Southwest Film 2023 coverage with a review of Evil Dead Rise. It's
Yeah.
been out in theaters. It's been out in theaters for a couple weeks now, and a lot of folks have been seeing it. Hopefully, you've had a chance to. If not, we'll talk about it spoiler free, all that good stuff as normal. My co hosts are rearing and ready to talk, though. I can sense it, so let me introduce them. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, babe, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you doing? You always ask
I'm
us how
doing
we're doing.
well.
We never ask you how you're doing.
Oh, that actually really means a lot to me. Thank
Oh,
you. I'm doing good.
oh
I'm
yeah.
doing good. I'm doing
Well,
good.
I'm good too and
I'm
ready to launch into movies.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad you're here. Definitely looking forward to talking about stuff with you, as well as our other co hosts we've been doing the show with for 10 years. Oh my gosh, so crazy. 10 years of William Lindis on the show. How you doing, Will?
First of all, doing great. Second of all, feeling old, not just because of the number of years we've spent doing this podcast, but like you mentioned, 40 years of the youngest of the three Star Wars original trilogy movies. That's a lot. But I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm glad we've got so much Star Wars old and new to chat about, just in general in life. And I'm also glad we've got good horror movies to talk about too. So lots of fun things on the docket today.
I think we're in a pretty good place right now. We're blessed. Hashtag blessed
Yeah.
to have a couple of cool things to talk about. Well, as Will alluded, we're going to be getting into our Return of the Jedi discussion. First things first. We'll jump into that here in a second, and then we'll bring you our Evil Dead Rise review a little bit later in the episode. Hang out with us. Strap in. It is time. Are y'all ready to dive into the 40th anniversary celebration of Return of the Jedi?
Ho
It's a
ho ho
trap.
ho 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 ho.
It's a trap.
I love it. All right. Cool. Then here we go. Our discussion of the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. All right. So, 40 years ago, a little movie called Return of the Jedi came out. As Will mentioned, it was the third film. It's the youngest film of the original trilogy. Wrapped up a lot of different plot elements. I think it's safe to say we're probably going to spoil Return of the Jedi in
Mm.
our discussion. We're not doing a full-on movie review, but as we're talking about kind of the experience of seeing the film again, potentially in the big screen, just talking through maybe some of our memories, wherever you guys want this conversation to go, I am open to, but just letting folks know spoilers can and probably will happen. So just an FYI on that, folks. But it's interesting that this movie has hit the 40-year mark, and it's really cool that they did a re-release in theaters, at least here in the United States, to celebrate the anniversary. um, I know that for Jim and myself, we got an opportunity to go to our local Cinemark. The one in the mall was the only one that was doing the special 40th anniversary screenings, and we ended up seeing it at like 7 o'clock on a Sunday night because that was the only showing that worked for us. So it was really weird to like be seeing a movie on a school night. We don't typically do that.
Yep.
But man, oh man, was it fun. We saw this with a big crowd. There were tons of people there, all hooting and hollering. And Will, I don't know if you saw on Facebook, but we had a special guest of the Movie Bears podcast
Encounter.
run in.
Yeah.
Yes, we ran into Felipe, who's been on the show a number of times in the past. He and his beloved Susie were there, and we walked in, and Felipe is just like, and we're like, ah, and we like just had to form a knot and just talk for a while. Super cool running into them. But
Mm-hmm.
Jim, how was the experience for you? Felipe and Susie aside, of course, that was a special
Yeah.
treat. But what was it like seeing this in theaters again?
It was good because I really can't remember the last time I saw this in theaters. I know, Brad, you were saying you don't think you ever saw it in a theater, right? Is that
I don't think I did.
right? I
No,
mean, this was probably
no.
came out the time of VHS rentals from Blockbuster for you.
Yep.
But yeah, I believe I did see this movie when it came out in theaters. The third one of the original trilogy, of course. Um, I think I saw them all in theaters. This one probably made the least of an impression on me, but it was good to see kind of this saga come to what we thought at the time was the close, right? We thought this was kind of the last. I think we thought at the time it was the last Star Wars movie, or at least in this saga. So yeah, it was good to see it again, and it's good sitting there. And then when the logo comes up and the music starts and the crawl and people start cheering again, like every time, it's pretty astounding. Like after 40 years and 45 years close to it for the Star Wars A New Hope, right? It's pretty astounding that the effect that this has had on our public culture, pop culture consciousness, right? Down through the generations. We're talking, there were young people there, there were people, my age there. And everybody, when that thing came up on the screen, they were cheering. And so that's, while I may have, mixed feelings about the movie itself, the experience was fantastic.
Yeah, you mentioned some young people there. I was really surprised. So, Will, when we walked into the theater, because this theater is in the mall, so it's very much like you walk in, there's the desk, but then like the escalator takes you up to the normal like theater area. We walked in, and there was like a huge crowd of people that were teenagers, like probably 12 to
Buying the
18,
tickets,
somewhere in
right?
there buying tickets, and I'm like, what the fuck are they here to see? Ugh, I'm glad it's not my screening. But then we go in, and they end up all shuffling in after we do, and I'm like, wait a second, they're here for Return of the Jedi? What? This is crazy. There were no adults with them. They were just there to see it on their own. And we were talking to Felipe, who has kids in that age range, and I guess their love of Star Wars is just as pure and wonderful,
Mm.
as those who are maybe in their 40s or their 60s. So really cool to see. Um, Will, how do you feel looking back on Return of the Jedi now 40 years later? Did you see this in theaters when you were growing up, or what was your experience?
No, actually, the only time there was a little stretch where I did see this in theaters once, but it was I mean, what, 25 years ago,
An
whatever.
anniversary thing,
Yeah, when they
probably.
did, like, there was like a little run up. I believe it was in the run up before the first of the prequels movies. They did sort of like a
Mm.
boom, ba boom, ba boom, kind of like with them in theaters. I'm a little fuzzy on exactly the timing of where it hit, but it was
Yeah.
around the time the prequels were getting ready to come out. And so I saw it then. And that's the only time I've seen it theatrically. I have a question about your screening. I take it then that the version that y'all saw had like all the kind of the the Lucas CGI stuff in it.
Yes.
How does
Yes.
and I think I know the answer to it based off of that exact reaction, but how does specifically the in Jabba's palace, the performance with the two singers, with the backing band, how does that come across, on a giant screen?
Guess
10
which moment
times.
I guess which moment I selected to go pee, Will.
Okay.
That'll tell you right there
That
everything you
answers
need to
that.
know about that. There were other moments too, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I always
It's
remember
mo-
that being like one of the most egregious because
yeah.
it goes on for so long, and you get that close up of like the mouth.
As much as I love Return of the Jedi, and I feel like it's not. I feel like it's not loved enough sometimes, unfortunately. As the last movie in a trilogy, that sometimes happens. So for that movie to already be suffering from some of that, to then be dicked around with by George Lucas 20 years later and have all that shit added in, it's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous and unnecessary. Um, but I don't know. I guess seeing it on the big screen, I got to see more of the hairy chested big guy that's like the Rancor handler. He was like standing, yeah, he was like standing in the background of that scene, and I
Such
never
acting,
noticed
though,
him
right?
before. I'd never noticed him before in that scene, and I think it was because I was watching it on the big screen that I was able to kind of see him in the dark. So silver linings, I guess.
You gotta take it where you can get it. I mean, yeah, it's interesting because it has really an interesting spot in sort of like the Star Wars pantheon because, I mean, it is the weakest of the three original movies, but that's also because the first two movies I think are, literal game changers, right? And
Yeah.
so Return of the Jedi being a notch below that, I don't think takes too much away from it to say that it's like, it's not one of the two best like science fiction fantasy movies of all time, that's okay. That's okay air to be in. I do think that it's one thing that I use as sort of like a means to like, when I'm feeling a little more down on it, to forgive myself on it is these are ultimately, you know, movies designed for younger audiences, right? And we capture them because we can look at things from like a four quadrant perspective. All ages can enjoy these things. I think Return of the Jedi leans a little bit more into the like, hey, like, holy crap, a lot of kids are really enjoying this, so let's really like ramp up the things that they're going to enjoy. And that's not a fault against it, right? Like that was 100% who the audience was. That was who was buying all of the toys and who was like going to see this movie like multiple times in theaters. I guess obviously adults were too, but yeah, I think that sometimes we forget that these are movies that are geared towards kids, and they should and they don't have to necessarily have like you know crazy reveals and hands being chopped off to be good.
Right. But I mean, but I think for me at least, the strength of this film is that it not the kids, not all the kids stuff, but the way that it concludes the Skywalker saga, right? At least for
Mhm.
the first three films. I think those are the elements of this movie that I like the best. The Empire trying to build their second the next Death Star, right? So we get more Death Star action, and we get Darth Vader and his the kind of the end of Darth Vader as we know it, and kind of the reveal at the end, and the twin sister, the woman that Luke has been kind of crushing on for like a movie and a half ends up being his sister. That was
Oops.
kind of cool. And his closure with Yoda, I thought was really good. And Brad, you could
Oh,
talk about
Yoda.
that more. You could talk about that more. And a lot. But you're right. Well, a lot of the kitty stuff, which unfortunately was a lot of the stuff that Lucas decided to zhuzh up for some reason.
Hmm.
I mean, to dress up with more. That whole like Jim Henson dance party at the beginning, in Jabba's thing, which I didn't really appreciate. It felt more like a cut scene from Dark Crystal or something. Like it was really, really weird. Like I was getting serious Dark Crystal vibes during
Mm.
during that part of the movie, which I didn't really appreciate. And I'm just count me as not really a huge fan. Well, I like the Ewoks fine. but I don't like that much Ewoks in my movie. It's just not a big fan of that. But overall, it's still, it was a movie kind of a different time, right? I mean, it was trying to
Hmm.
do something, and it did. I think it did pull the trilogy like over the goal line, but some of the stuff in there I could have maybe done without.
I
I'll tell you, a Return of the Jedi. Don't hate me, but Return of the Jedi is my second favorite original trilogy movie, above A New Hope. Sorry, I mean, I like A New Hope, but I don't know. It isn't the bombdiggity.com for me that it is for other people. So I definitely get though some of the complaints about Jedi. I know you're shaking your head, but this is about me. This is me time. Um,
I love that you love
it's
it.
it is very heavy on the Ewok action. And like as a kid, I think I really loved and adored all the Ewok stuff. As an adult, and especially as someone who is like gotten into the habit of watching movies critically, now the Ewoks kind of bug me a little bit. Now I'm kind of like, all right, this is too much Ewoks. All right, we didn't really need this scene either. Um, but going into this screening, I think I gave myself permission to let movie watcher adult Brad go the fuck away for a couple hours and let little kid Brad just come out to play. And I was like smiling ear to ear, like this whole movie, through all the Ewok stuff. I don't know. It was fun and I enjoyed it. I think, Jim, to your point earlier, the only time that I was like feeling a certain way was, when Yoda dies. That always
Mm.
gets me, but like,
It
I don't
really
know,
got
some,
you, didn't it?
it did. Something about seeing it on the big screen with like all these people who are there like sharing their love of Star Wars, like, you could hear other people like with the sniffles, when Yoda's like, twilight is upon me and soon night must fall. Like everybody knows what's coming, and when the music swells and changes, and Yoda's body like fades away and the blanket like stop motion falls down. Yeah, it looks weird, whatever. I don't know, I had a big emotional reaction to it. And I was really surprised, Jim, that you mentioned you had a little bit of an emotional reaction, uh, kind of following that scene. Can you maybe touch
Yeah,
on
when
that a little?
there's one scene just between Yoda's actual death scene and when Luke actually leaves is it Dagobah? What is
Yep.
no?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Take
when
over.
he leaves the planet, there's a a long shot of Yoda's home, hut, cabin in the
Mhm.
woods,
Hovel.
Yeah.
cabin in the swamp, and the light goes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. First of all, I was really thinking about like the difference between like what 1983 versus today. Um, Boy, the Ewoks walked so the minions could run, right? Like if these movies came out exactly today,
Yeah.
we would see a weird sort of commodization of the Ewoks as a an entity, right? And we see a little bit of that in like the Mandalorian and what we saw with like Grogu and all of that. Yeah, it's interesting. I will say the Yoda death scene has slightly been ruined by one thing that I've seen on the internet a few times.
Robot chicken
Uh,
or something.
no. Just something that like it's just one of those little funny like little moments that like I always think about now. It's a friend of mine who is a parent said, as a kid, I was moved when Yoda died. As an adult, I totally understand the idea of just laying down and dying when your child is asking you the 87th question in a row. And that scene is just Luke going, oh, Master Yoda, can you tell me more about this? Fuck off, kid, I'm dying now. Like he just keeps
Uh,
asking questions. And I get it. It's a good scene, but it is funny
listen,
how he's just like
listen. When you're 900 years old, you should get what do you call it, a distinguished death, right? But you're right, Will.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about it in that way. But as we were riding home, and as I'm watching the scene, I'm like, it's all about Luke in that scene, but he's not the one dying. You know what I mean? Like that was
Yeah,
just
but
it was a little weird. I know we talked about it.
I feel like we're being too critical. Like,
No,
Yeah.
it's
like
having fun with
Luke
it.
Luke left his training unfinished to go save his friends. He
Mhm.
came back.
Mhm.
He didn't have all the information. Nobody fucking told him Vader was his dad. Of course he's going to have questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
there was a
Yoda
good
wanted
reveal
to,
there.
Yoda wanted to impart as much info to Luke, I think, as he could before he died. So, but I get the joke.
Yeah, it's not it's yeah it's it takes literally nothing away from the movie for me. It's more just
Yeah.
like it's funny to think about how, in a good way, like how you get these little scenes in movies that you're then able to relate to your life as an adult. And I think that's what's
Mhm.
interesting to it. Like not the not the detraction of it as a movie. If anything, like the fucking relatability of it, right?
Mhm.
You're able to take these little things and go like, as an adult, I see this movie in a different way because as a kid, you're Luke Skywalker. As a kid, you're Luke Skywalker. You're bright-eyed and eyes wide, like like thinking like, boy, like any minute now, someone's gonna come along to my little humdrum existence and tell me that I'm a space wizard and that I'm gonna go off and do amazing things. And then as an adult, you realize like, wow, things are a lot more complex than that. You can start to become like the Obi-Wan, or you can start to become like the Yoda, or you can start to see yourself like, boy, I understand a little bit of the the Darth Vader side of things.
Mhm.
Not all of it. Certainly, if you're feeling super Vader, please stay away from orphanages. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Vader, Will, you mentioned the George Lucas fuckery. I had forgotten about this until the final scene where like we're in the Ewok village and we've got the song, which has been replaced by a really shitty song. I prefer Yub Dub, but whatever. But where Luke like looks on as like Obi-Wan and Yoda or Force ghosts. And I expected Sebastian Shaw, who played Old Man Vader dying in the suit, to like show up as his Force ghost. But nope, there's fucking Hayden Christensen looking all smug and stupid, glowing back at me, and I just wanted to like punch him through the screen. Um, I really wish, and maybe this exists somewhere. I don't know. I really wish there was like a 4K like print of each of these movies, like in their original form, that I could have access to. I don't need my Ewoks to blink. Thank you very much. Um, but
You don't need the toad to grab the lizard outside
well, he always
the
did that. He
did
always
he?
did that. Yeah, he
Did he?
always did that. And he always burped, which kid humor, whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's sad that George Lucas like mucked with a bunch of things, but it was still super cool to see on the big screen. All things considered.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that part, Brad, until the very end. I'm like, and I'm thinking in my mind again, this makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Like chronologically, it makes
Mm,
zero sense, right? Because up to that point, we don't know Vader as Hayden Christensen at all. Zero. There's zero tie to Hayden Christensen, and boom,
mhm.
he places him at the end of the movie. And I would imagine people, I don't know. It seems like very bad writing to me.
I
Like
think
put
I think it was done with the intent that you watch the prequel movies first.
right.
Like new people to Star Wars are going to watch the prequel movies first,
ah,
then watch the original trilogy. And they will be familiar with Hayden Christensen at that point. But Luke certainly fucking isn't. He's never seen a picture of
Yeah.
his dad looking like that. When he saw his dad was that without the mask, and his dad's all like, old man, raspy voice, like he's an old dude. Like if I'm Luke and I'm seeing that, 21-year-old, whatever, I'm not going to recognize him. Like, I don't
yeah.
Yeah, Obi-Wan, Yoda, who's this himbo you're hanging out with?
know. Could you introduce me?
Could you
Yeah.
introduce me? Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's a bit of a change to the
Or
canon.
at least have him have a look on his face like,
Mm,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean there are, we talk about the Lucas editions. You can find like the despecialized editions out there, but they are sort of, I think they're in HD, but not like
Yeah.
4K. You know, I don't think
Yeah.
that I could be wrong, but I don't think there's been like a someone's despecialized and
Yeah.
4K'd it. So
I may have been sailing the high seas just to browse, and somebody had a laser disc rip of the three movies that
mhm.
was available to trade on the high seas, if you will. But the
Har.
stills that they posted, they just didn't look super great, even though
Right.
it's from a laser disc. Like it's not the same as 4K, but I don't think we'll ever get 4K non-special editions. But
There are
listen, I know
people
we
out there
gotta
who go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
There are people out there who've taken files of older movies and done significant like up converting, right, and processing to them, and tried to bring them as pristine as possible without like making them look over processed. And they've done it with other movies. I'm surprised if nobody's done it with these movies yet.
Here's the
I'd be
thing on
surprised.
that, like the despecialized editions happened sort of in that obviously kind of post Lucas, sort of pre like Disney taking the helm for like all the new films era, right? And so I think they're kind of allowed to sort of still exist in the way that they are because it sort of was pre Disney Star Wars. I would be afraid of a bunch of the Mouse's lawyers if I tried to do that today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If they
Yeah.
could trace it to you or whatever, yeah.
So Jim, get this. Will, don't judge me too harshly. Listeners, don't judge me too harshly. I have a storage unit back in Michigan that I've been paying for the last 15 years with my whole Michigan life in it from when I ejected from Michigan and moved to New Mexico. Jim's shaking his head. I know. But listen, that's my treasure vault. And I'm only paying like $30 a month for it. So it's not that much. But in that treasure vault, I have the 3 VHS tape set that came out in full THX when that was like a brand new thing. And I'm thinking, babe, when we finally make that trip back home to Michigan and clear that unit out, maybe you can use your adapter thing that you were using for the home movies to like record
Digitize them.
those,
Yeah.
digitize those tapes for me without
Sure.
Disney suing us. We won't distribute them. But
Yeah.
you
Let's
know.
edit this part out. Okay. So if you're coming back in now, we just got done editing out a part of the podcast.
This may not be George Lucas fucked with, but it's Jim Pugliafico fucked with.
All right. Well, listen, this has been a great discussion. I know we have a whole nother movie to talk about. One thing to close us out, Hammy is with us in the live chat. Hey,
Yay,
Hammy, good to
Hammy.
see you. Hammy, thank you for the props for my Yoda impression, and Will, you did a pretty good one too. Jim, Hammy would like to hear your Yoda impression, so we're putting you on the spot. You could use the "When 900 years old you reach" line if you
I
want.
don't know the lines. I don't know the lines.
You said it earlier, so I thought you did.
Yeah. When 900 years you are, you shall die too. Whatever.
my favorite part of Yoda as a character is when he gets to the end of a sentence and just kind of like is tired of that sentence and just whatever's
Yeah.
yeah, where he's just like, "Force you shall use, Luke." I don't give a fuck.
All right.
Let's just make Star Wars. The rest of the podcast is just Star Wars noises.
Perfect. I love it. Mike Lovins is here, our very own Magic Mike. He says, damn, just got to tune in. Sorry, I missed the Jedi discussion. Mike, a bummer that you came in right at the end, but through the magic of Facebook Live and YouTube, you could rewind. So feel free to back it up to the beginning of the show. Yeah. Listen, share in the love with us. We know what a huge fan you are, and we're a huge fan of you. So I think it works. Good to see you,
Mike
friend.
might be Mike might be the biggest Star Wars fan I know. I mean, I know, Brad, you're a huge Star Wars fan, but Mike,
both Mike and Felipe in on Star Wars conversations. Yeah. In fact, we've pitted them against
we had a
each
trivia
other
contest.
Trivia duels.
We did.
But The great thing about Star Wars is that there's room for so many of us to be like
Yeah.
because shit, it's so many years of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. Well, this is going to close this out. Hammy says 3 solid impressions from 3 solid dudes. So there you go, Jim, bringing in the
That's right.
trifecta of MVP Yoda impressions.
Thanks for your
Well done.
graciousness. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic of conversation. Mike Levin wants a rematch, by the way, with Felipe with Star Wars trivia. Mike,
should
maybe we
arrange
can
that.
make that happen. I think we could. We'll work on that. But Evil Dead Rise, a little movie we saw at South by Southwest Film 2023, is out there in the wild right now. We've seen a ton of people here in Tucson at a couple different theaters going to see that movie, which honestly kind of surprised me a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about that more. But I'm itching to talk about it with you, Jim, and with you, Will. Are the two of you ready to make that jump?
Absolutely. Jump
All
scare.
right. Nice.
Do it.
All right. Well, then, of course, we're going to talk about Evil Dead Rise, spoiler free, for about 10 minutes or so. So if you haven't seen it yet, feel free to hang out with us. We're going to give you our spoiler free thoughts. Then we'll give you fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. All that said, here we go. Our discussion of Evil Dead Rise. All right. So, Jim, give us a little bit of introduction on this one. Of course, as part of our South by Southwest coverage, maybe you could, in addition to like setting up the film and telling us what you think, talk a little bit about the experience of seeing it at South by, brought to us by Claudette and her team.
Yes, I will. This was one of the featured films that we saw at South by Southwest this year, back in early to mid-March. And so glad we did, because look, one of the very first films, maybe the first film we've ever seen at South by Southwest in Austin, was the Evil Dead remake back in 2013, something like that. 10 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. In the same theater with the same hyped up crowd. But yeah, we got a chance to see this with writer director Lee Cronin there. Bruce Campbell is there. All the talent from the movie were there, of course, for Q&As afterwards. It was the premiere of the film. And and we've seen the movie twice now. That was the first time we saw it, obviously. But, a lot of times festival films play better at a festival with a festival crowd. And when you get home and you see them in your local, mega multiplex, 40 screen theater, it loses some of the magic. And guess what? For me, this film did not. This film did hold up. And does hold up outside of the festival bubble, I'm happy to report. Let me give you the IMDb summary. A twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. So, yeah, this was... there's a lot to talk about with this film. Probably the fifth, maybe more. I will admit, even though I've seen the original, the remake, there's some of them I haven't seen, but it may be like the fifth or sixth feature film in the Evil Dead. I know there's Ash versus Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2. This is the fifth one.
I think so.
Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, the Evil Dead remake in 2013, and then this, not counting the
Ash versus Evil Dead was a show?
Yeah. TV show, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, all right, good. Well, I had missed one and added one, so there. I still came out with the right number. Yeah, I really like this. This one, I think it was just exactly what we want. A lot of like really gnarly demon action, blood soaked, just craziness going on. There's some really imaginative stuff going on in this movie, and the overall premise of the film is great. It's all contained within this family, and if you've seen the trailers, the mom at some point is possessed, and she's basically going after her kids, which is just the scary one of the scary. It alone is one of the scariest things, especially because these kids range from young adult down to like a very young daughter. And so I just love that. I thought all the performances were great, especially I think it's Alyssa Sutherland
Mm-hmm.
as Ellie and Lily Sullivan as Beth. Just some really good performances. A lot of the other supporting cast are really kind of new faces, I would say. I mean, they have some credits, but not anything you might recognize unless you've seen a ton of movies. This is a slam dunk. Yeah, I think this is a winner, and um, for something that's kind of outside my comfort zone genre, for me to enjoy it that much, because it brought something a little different to the table. I loved it. I can recommend it wholeheartedly.
All right. We got a wholehearted recommend from Jim.
My whole
Thanks so
heart, just to
much.
rip it right out of my chest here,
And then eat it.
and then
Uh,
eat it. Yeah.
well, thank you for sharing your thoughts, babe. Will, how about for you? What was this like seeing it South by Southwest? And what did you think of the film?
Yeah, so I'll start with the experience, right? When you see a film at South by Southwest, you're seeing it with a large audience, especially when it's playing at one of the larger venues, which this one did. You're seeing it with like 1,200 plus other people. Um, and you're seeing it with people who are all, for the most part, like in it, right? Like, and I'm not saying in the movie, although definitely there's some of those there, right? But what I mean by
Invested.
it is like, sometimes it can be frustrating when you go to a movie on like a Saturday night and like maybe the people next to you are like just, they're having a conversation, or maybe they've got their cell phones out, or they're there to pass the time, but they're not there to be like kind of in the experience. This one, everyone there was like there to be in the experience. So you had the anything that was like supposed to be squeamish, you heard the audience react, the way they're supposed to. There were screams. There's, those little laughters that happen when, like, this is a funny movie, and so when those jokes landed, they, the audience responded. So I loved seeing this at South by Southwest. And you're absolutely right. There is the possibility of that experience giving festival goggles to a movie, right? When you see it in ideal circumstances, how can it compare to a movie that you do not see in ideal circumstances, right? That's hard. But
Mm.
I think you're absolutely right. This one holds up. The Evil Dead franchise is one that I specifically love because I love Sam Raimi's sort of blend of horror and comedy, which came out of necessity. This was with the original Evil Dead movie. A lot of like kind of the over the top and the schlock and kind of the weirdness came from the fact that he was working on the budget that he was working on, which was nothing. And that's how you made that type of story work. And then he crafted that and turned that into something very special with Evil Dead 2, where we got a lot of the memorable moments. Army of Darkness, which, I mean, hell, we got some lines from that are still part of pop culture. What I love so much about this one is it both recontextualizes Evil Dead as a story. This is the first one that's, well, not the first one, but the first one of the modern ones that's not set in like a cabin in the woods. Army of Darkness, of course, was set in a fantasy land, but this one sets its story in like a high rise. So some of the fear and uncomfortableness you have from isolation is stripped away, and instead you have a new version of like what's it like to feel isolated in an urban jungle, right?
Mm.
This one also, I think, did something pretty neat for me, which was I feel like it reintroduced the comedy into this franchise. And what I mean by that is I loved the 2013 version. I thought it was a dark, twisted, intense movie that really understood the source material. The one, like, I don't want to say fault, but the one thing that it was missing from an Evil Dead franchise is it didn't have that Raimi humor mixed into it. That was a very serious movie. This one here, Raimi's thumbprint is definitely on this, even though he's not the director. And you get some moments that of just over the top, unbridled fun. But you also get terror, and you get no punches being held back on. This is a movie that is soaked in blood, soaked in cynicism, soaked in wit, and soaked in a very specific type of terror that has you not necessarily like looking over your shoulder to see what goes bump in the night, but instead sort of like pumping your fist as you fight back against what bumps in the night. And I think that's really cool. Lead performances are really good. Especially loved, like you mentioned, Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland. They both do some pretty cool stuff here, but really I think everyone stepped up to the plate for me. This was a win. This was a huge win. I would love to see, I want to see more of this. I want to see what else they can do with this. I want to see them do more set pieces. We'll talk about what it is, but the opening sequence of this movie is just an absolutely fantastic set piece in and of itself. So I want more of this. Give me more, because this was what I wanted.
Sounds like a pretty big recommend from you then, Will. Is that right?
Yeah, lukewarm. No, yeah, I loved it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts as well, Will. Seeing this at a festival is interesting. When I think about film festivals, I don't know, a lot of my love goes to like the smaller films that, don't have a giant franchise behind them, don't have, 4 other movies that have come before. But I appreciate that festivals like South by Southwest do bring in some of these big headliners, I think, to help draw folks to the festival and get them to see some of these other movies that maybe won't get as many eyeballs. So it's really cool for them to bring in a movie like Evil Dead Rise. So many people wanted to see that movie. People did not get in, unfortunately. They were standing in line. We had express passes, and we got in line, 2.5 hours early?
Something like that.
Yeah, and we got okay seats down on the bottom floor, but I know people who were in line for like 4 or 5 hours, and didn't get in. So, it's one of those things where the demand is there, but there's only so many seats, right? So I'm glad that this movie kind of went wide. It's available for people to see outside of a festival. But one thing I want to talk about from seeing it at the fest was a quirky, crazy moment that happened during the Q&A after the film. So Bruce Campbell, of all people, is like in the middle of answering a question, and somebody on the upper balcony stands up and is like, "This movie fucking sucked," and he's like yelling down at Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi and like all the cast.
Drunk as fuck, by the way.
Drunk or high or both. Yeah,
clearly. And those things can be fun, but like, let's not swear at Bruce Campbell, please. He's national treasure. But it was awesome seeing Bruce Campbell tell him to like get the fuck out of the theater. I will never forget that. That was just super, super fun. And then like everybody in the theater turned on this guy, and people were like booing and throwing popcorn at him, and it was crazy.
He was run out of the theater. He ran out into the night. Never to be heard from again.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was one of the craziest things that's ever happened in a movie theater for me.
I have to say, like, it was memorable. But it was also a little scary in the moment too.
Because, it was unfortunate.
We've had incidents of like, obviously there's incidents of violence that happen in movie theaters. And so when I hear someone suddenly start yelling at people on stage from balcony, like there's a little part of me that was like, you should also know where the exits were. And that sucks. I know that's not what we're talking about, but that was a one guy can try to ruin an evening for everyone else.
I mean, it's in the back of my mind too, and like major props to Claudette and her team, and their partnership with the
Yes.
Austin Police Department, and they had dogs sniffing for guns and weapons and bombs, and we saw them leading the dogs like through that theater, like to make sure everything was on the up and up. But yeah, I mean, even with all those precautions in place, that thought was in the back of my mind too. But I think that the cast handled it pretty well, especially the kids in that cast. This is like one of their first big engagements, talking about this movie, which just had its premiere. Kudos to them for not, like freaking out or something. But really cool to see this at the festival. I really enjoyed seeing it for a second time. Will, Jim, you both talked about festival goggles. I had the same concern, but I loved it just as much the second time through as I did the first time. I won't go into all the reasons why. I think you both said them very well. But yeah, so super good. Really, really glad we got this movie. And honestly, I hope that this is setting up maybe a couple more movies to come. They don't have to come out next year. Let's let it breathe for a little while. But like, I would have some more of this.
Yeah, I just want to, before we get into spoilers, which I know we got to do soon, I just want to, I was super impressed with the writer director in this. Like, I don't
Mm.
know if I've ever seen anything he's done before, but this guy stepped in and like, got a big hit like right off the bat with the audience. And like, you got to think like Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. Yeah, I'm sure they were involved and they were probably heavily involved, but you got a sense that this guy was like right on the same frequency level as those guys. And as he was writing and directing this film, because he seemed to breathe new life into this franchise to some degree. And I give him all the props in the world. I mean, we heard him talk a little bit in the Q&A, and just the kind of the things he says, you could tell he has a passion for the stuff, and it shows on what we got on the screen.
Mm.
If you want to check out more, this is writer director Lee Cronin, who, you're absolutely right. Like he took guidance from Raimi well and created something that was both his own and also felt within the franchise. He has another movie out worth watching called A Hole in the Ground, or Hole in the Ground, somewhere in that. And I think it's on like HBO Max right now. It came out in 2019. It was sort of his like the film that
On
he
the
got
scene.
before this one,
Yeah.
right? And so definitely worth watching, just to sort of put some more views behind this guy's name, so that he gets more and more work.
There you go. Well, thank you for that recommendation. Ryan Rivera is in the chat. Hey, Ryan. Ryan says, "Can't believe I almost missed y'all tonight." You're midway through the show, friend. Lots of show left to go. So good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, Ryan, don't feel bad. It's probably not your fault. We had to skip a week, and so sometimes it's we get out of the pattern a little bit. But just keep checking the Twitters and Facebooks, and we're on there. But typically look for us on these Tuesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, look for us next week. Oh, wait. No, we're not at the plug section yet, but
Yeah, we'll be
Not
there.
quite yet.
Yeah.
Not quite yet. All right. Well, Jim, Will, how do you feel about taking things into spoiler territory at this point?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll find out in spoilers if this movie is really great or really cheesy.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the reference you're making.
I know where you guys are going, and I just
You're mad that you didn't come up with it.
I am a little bit. I'm a little jealous, but I'm also very proud of you, Jim and Will.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, listen up, folks. Spoilers for Evil Dead Rise are officially fair game if you have not yet seen the film and you value your virginal innocence where the plot is concerned. This is your chance to step away, go see the movie, then come on back and listen to the rest of our review. If you've already seen the movie or you just don't give a fuck about spoilers, keep hanging out with us. You are more than welcome. Glad to have you here. We're going to put our official little ticker at the bottom in case anybody joins us to let them know spoilers are happening right now. So you guys were calling out the gore and stuff, and I didn't want to like add on before the spoiler section because I kind of wanted to come back to that. It was interesting finding out that they'd used something like 1,000 gallons of fake blood for like the elevator scene and like in the hallway, the blood everywhere. But I was really impressed by the practical effects from this movie. Really, really great job. But I think we need to explain the practical effect that the joke you guys were making before the jump, where that comes from. So, Jim, set this up for us since you made the initial joke. What happens in that moment?
Here's your visual aid right here. Right. This is what happens in that moment. So yeah, so we we have a moment in the movie where one of the victims, one of the family members is attacked by another family member with, of all things, a common kitchen cheese grater. Like in one of the most like cringe-inducing horror injury scenes you can imagine. Like with the whole audience gasps when this thing comes out and goes into the flesh of I think it's the sister, right? It goes into Beth's flesh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was pretty awesome. And there's an example of like having a horror moment and a comedy moment all together in one thing, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, let's tell a joke and then we'll wait, a minute and a half and then do some more horror. You can have it both in the same exact action. And I think this movie does that really well, especially in this scene. There's a couple of other scenes as well. I actually liked, Will, that it didn't feel like over the top comedy. Like you can ruin a horror movie with too much comedy, right? This movie seemed to have the exact right balance, at least for me. It did. It seemed like it had some goofy comedy, but it really toned it down. And when that cheese grater came out, you're like, oh my God, they're not going to go there. Like that's where the comedy comes from. Like you don't expect that to happen. But then when it happens, you're like, oh my God, that's disgusting and terrifying at the same time. So
well,
that was great. That was
even
great.
more it's even more fun because they really double down, and this is one of the fun things about being able to see this in a festival crowd. On our way out, they were handing out some tchotchkes for the movie, posters and some fun stuff like that. Will, I hear yours rustling. I know you're ready to lift it.
Crinkle, crinkle,
They gave
crinkle.
us these Mom Linguini kits. They're bags of blood-covered sour worms and like a bloody cheese grater. How awesome is that? And I got to read it to you. So it says, freshly made by hand, al deadite perfection in 9 minutes. It's Mom's Linguini authentic family recipe. I don't know that I'll ever open these sour worms, but the cheese grater is like a fridge magnet, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of the best pieces of like swag that I've ever gotten at a movie, and you get a lot of it at these things, right? But this was original. It was fun. It was a little dark. Again, like this swag matched the tone of the movie, and to your point about the humor, Jim, I think that's what works for me so well in a horror movie is when it understands what it needs to be tonally, right? And that's different for every movie. Like sometimes you need to have a stone cold sober movie. Sometimes you need something that is like playful. Sometimes you need something that's like, I think about something like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which really nailed like making the humor elements of what it's doing work. Here, the humor is in the dialogue, right? Like specifically the Deadite dialogue. The Deadites are personalities. They're forces of personality. They are getting gleeful torment from fucking with the people that they're like taunting and I think that's where the fun of it is. That's where the humor of it is in. But it's not, again,
Mm.
like, like, yeah, I'm going to do my tight five. It's just in sort of like just that uncomfortable, just like, I'm laughing because this is uncomfortable, and I'm laughing because what's being said is funny, and I'm laughing because the kills are so over the top. I mean, we have a cheese grater, we've got, of course, we have a
Eating
chainsaw, we have
glass.
eating glass, we have a chainsaw, we've got a wood chipper thing, we've got,
Don't forget, don't forget Stephanie.
we can't forget the death by Stephanie. So, like, this is a movie that is, again, I think I used this word a moment ago. It's playful.
Yeah.
It's you think about it compared to something like Saw, which is another kind of buckets of blood style movie, right? And the fun of Saw, or whatever it is, comes in sort of like the over the top traps. The fun in this comes from like the over the top buckets of blood kills, right? And I think there's something. This is a movie that I think Evil Dead fans are going to enjoy, because it really does feel like it checks a lot of the boxes that you want from this franchise.
Mm. You mentioned the mind fuckery, and a lot of that is almost more scary than like the actual like violence that's happening. Like there's a moment in the film where the mom is like in the tub, and she comes up out of the tub, and she's looking all scary, and the little girl is like, "Mommy?" And the mom's like, "Mommy's with the maggots now." And she like makes a face, and then you cut to the little girl, and you can see she's like terrified out of her brain. No violence is actually happening in that moment, but like gives you fucking chills. And again, it's like half comedy, half mindfuckery. It's really interesting how they thread that needle. They do an amazing
Yeah.
job there.
Yeah, and there are some legit like terrifying things in this movie. I mean, we mentioned the cheese grater. Um, there's some stuff that goes on like that I really loved. Especially it involved like the hallway and a peephole, and you're inside this apartment where things have gone batshit crazy. The demon possessed mom who wants to murder all her children has been locked out into the hallway, but there's other people in the hallway, right, that are getting totally annihilated by her. And there's blood and violence happening, and you're looking through a peephole. That's all you see, looking out into this hallway. And of course, if you ever look through one of those peepholes, you can't see
Mm-hmm.
things, like your peripheral vision is gone, right? You don't see anything to the sides. So you see bodies like flying past the peephole. Just some really, really cool stuff. And then the little girl goes up to the peephole, and the mom is there on the other side. She's trying to convince her to let her in the house, like, "Mommy, you're scaring me." And she's like, "Nothing that a little hug won't fix." You know what I mean? And convinces the girl to like open the light. Like just really terrifyingly humorous stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I really dug it.
Well,
It worked for
and
me.
it doesn't pull its punches either, because for a movie about
No.
essentially a family,
Yes.
who are pitted against each other, it has a pretty low survival rate overall, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In places that I didn't expect, and from what I've heard, actually, I was talking to someone who was in one of the test audiences, and one of the test screenings for it. They had one of the family members who died survived, and they went back and kind of like modified it a bit to where that character didn't make it through. And I think that was a
Mm.
wise decision. This movie needed to trim the fat to get to the true terror of what's happening.
Too many movies will, and I'll say this, I say it all the time. Too many movies pull their punches when it comes to killing some of their main characters,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're seen as like, sweet little young innocent children or whatever, right? And one of the things I liked about this movie, it wasn't afraid to do that, right? There were people who were quite young in this movie and very innocent getting absolutely annihilated. And I won't. I know we're in spoilers, but I won't say
But
exactly
yeah,
which characters. I'll keep that. But like, I love that about this movie, that it was just like it wasn't afraid to throw the punch and let the punch land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure. Got a comment from Mike Levins who says, I enjoyed this so much that after seeing it, I immediately binged the other 4 movies over the weekend. I have not rewatched the other movies myself, but it's got me really wanting to go back and watch Ash versus Evil Dead, the TV series. I saw the first episode of that when it first came out. In fact, with Sam White, friend of the show, who we're going to see next week in Palm Springs. Can't wait to see you, Sam. But I don't know, like, Will, have you checked that show out at all? Is it any good past the first episode? Do you know anything?
I haven't, because I am so fucking far behind on literally all television shows at this point. Like
Oh,
my need to watch list.
life.
Well, and it's like, every time I turn around, there's another like, oh, have you watched the
Yep.
13
Must
episodes of this new
watch.
show? And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm still on like 2005 shows, so no, I haven't gotten to it yet.
All right. Well, I may, Jim. I don't know if it's something you're interested in, but I may circle back and
I would watch some of them with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't think I've ever seen the second one, to be honest.
So you should watch the second one, because I think the second Evil Dead 2 is the one that is the most I think crucial to the DNA of kind of what Evil Dead is now. Like,
Mhm.
it's sort of like a remake-ish, sequel-ish, whatever, of one. And then Army of Darkness is just, it's a fantasy movie. But Evil Dead 2, if you haven't seen it yet, watch that before you watch Ash vs. Evil Dead, because I think that'll inform a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's good advice.
I have a question though for you guys.
Yeah.
Since I think you both probably know a little bit more about the franchise than I do, having only seen like the first one, the remake, and then this one. Is this considered, or would you consider it, a sequel to the other movies that came before, or any of the other movies that
They've
came
been
before?
coy.
Or is it just, or like how I think of it is, it exists in the same universe, but it's not a direct sequel. Like that's, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong.
So I think they've been a little coy with that. The one in 2013, they actually made some references to Ash, especially towards the end of the movie and in the stinger, so they were really kind of setting it up as maybe like a prequel-y thing. This one's been a little more divorced from the lore. Like, this is a Deadite story that doesn't necessarily need the rest of the weight of the Evil Dead franchise, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of don't count it as like sequel, prequel, anything like that. I just count it as another, in-universe story about the Deadites. Yeah.
Somebody asked this question during the Q&A about where this movie kind of fits into everything. And Bruce Campbell was like, you're thinking about it too fucking hard.
Yeah.
And that's the advice that I'm going to take.
Yep.
I'm not going to try and do mental gymnastics to make it fit somewhere, but if this movie is setting up another movie to come, because we had the whole in media res thing that happens with this movie, right? The beginning scene is the girl that gets taken over in the cabin by the lake or whatever, and then we come full circle to that at the end, back to that. So maybe they're going to do another movie. I don't know. We'll see. I'd be okay if it's like a chronological thing with pieces that fit in. But yeah, I don't know that there's an overall like, plan. Hey,
I will.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brad.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
Nope. I was going to change topics. So
No,
ahead.
both of you go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I will say this movie has given me, at least, the most thrilling title reveal sequence that I've gotten this year, and probably will see all year. Like, I thought that I love the beginning of this film. Like, I think it's like a little thing all to itself that is fucking genius. Like the way they set this story up. You're in the camera and you're going down the river. Like I guess that's supposed to represent the demon or whatever.
Yeah, whenever
I
the
think
demons, the Deadites are like going to a body,
I think it did that in another movie, maybe.
Well,
I don't know. But anyway.
It does it at the beginning, but it's the drone. Remember? It's the drone flying.
Well, it turns out to
sequence.
be the drone.
Yeah.
Right. But it emulates
the
demon thing, which is really cool. And then you're like, what the fuck is going on? We're at a cabin in the woods. I don't know these characters. What's going to happen? There's a girl by a lake reading a book, blah, blah, blah. And then things go fucking bananas crazy. A
Mm-hmm.
girl gets her fucking scalp ripped off by a demon possessed girl, which was like the first gasp.
Yeah.
Like there was an audible gasp in the theater, like when we watched that both times, both at
Mm-hmm.
South by Southwest and at home. And then the demon girl like basically rises like out of the lake slowly, and the title credits come up in the background. Just fucking incredible, like hair standing on your arms kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
You
Yeah.
knew you were in for a fucking ride as soon as that scene happened.
Yeah.
For sure. Ryan Rivera in the chat says that he wants to share some big news with us, and says last weekend he married his boyfriend of 10 years. I saw the
What?
pictures on Facebook. Ryan, beautiful, beautiful stuff. So
Aw.
happy for you and your new husband. We wish you all the best, many years of happiness.
Yes, so happy for you, Ryan. Congratulations, the first of many, many, many years of marital bliss for the two of you.
Congratulations. And I don't know if you've got a wedding registry or not, and if you have a cheese grater on it, but if you don't, I'll be glad to send you one.
Oh
No, but
goodness.
congratulations. That's
I
amazing.
think if I remember correctly, one of their wedding presents was a one of the what is it, the OLED switches, which
Mm-hmm.
fuck yeah, I love that choice.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
This is a total aside, but I just got the new Tears of the Kingdom Zelda OLED Switch the other day. Um, that OLED screen is fucking amazing. I don't know how I played my Switch with just I had the original Switch, and it's such a big upgrade that I want to start watching movies on it. Like that's how good that
Oh,
screen is.
nice.
It's so good. Yeah. Anyway, that was an aside.
Well, speaking of that aside, just real quick, Brad, when does that game come out, and when will we get you back?
So here's the thing. It comes out next week on the 12th. We're going to be in Chubfest in Palm Springs. I will have my Switch with me, but I'm really having a long, dark night of the soul as to whether like I'm going to play that game at all during that weekend, even though I'm bringing my Switch. Some friends want to throw down some Mario Kart. That's why I'm bringing it. Otherwise, I'd leave it at home. But part of me is like, I know if I start playing that game, like naked guys in a pool, I'm not even going to think about it. Like, I'm going to be like, I'm building a robot with Link and his new powers, and it's going to be amazing. So these are the choices we have to make as adults, right? Naked men, video games. What do you do? If you can combine them, that's the way to make it work. But
yeah, I think I mean, do what you will do, but I do think that leaving that behind and having that as a when you get back home present for yourself is a good idea. Yeah, a time and a
we'll
place
see
for
what happens.
everything, and
I'll report back and let you know how it goes. Hammy says, "Don't do it. The draw of Zelda is too strong." Yeah.
Just don't play it in the shacks. You know what I mean? Don't sit in the corner in the shacks with your Switch in your hand.
I mean, there could be other things in my other
That's
hand, but
and so Evil Dead Rise, huh?
I think we've gotten all the blood we're gonna get out of that corpse. But what a fun movie! I just want to say, again, such a huge thank you to Claudette and the South by Southwest film team, and all the folks who bring their films to these festivals. This is officially the close of our South by coverage for this year. There are some other movies coming out that we saw at the festival, so we may bring South by up again, but like this is the last installment of our official stuff. So I just want to remind folks, film festivals are totally a thing. There's likely one happening in your city, even if they don't have a giant headline like Evil Dead Rise. There's going to be some amazing films, and you can find some really cool stuff by going to those. Some of them are pretty inexpensive too, like a $50 film badge. Gets you access to 40 movies or something. I mean, you're not going to get that in a normal movie theater, over the course of a weekend. So do yourself a favor and check these things out.
I guarantee you the best movie that you didn't know that you needed to see is playing at a festival in your area sometime this year. You just have to look for it.
Yep. Agreed.
Indeed. All right, fellas. Well, listen, I know we're coming back next week, babe, on our wedding anniversary next Tuesday. Just crazy. Speaking of weddings, 6 years. What? That blows my mind. But we are coming back next week with our review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Looking forward to chatting about that with you guys. But in case anyone wants to chat with us between now and next week, let's let them know how they can get in touch. Jim Pugliafco, where can people find you online to chat?
You can find me on Twitter at my handle at JJP Out West. That's where on Twitter where I can where I tweet about movies and mostly about stuff like that. And also I'm on Letterboxd under the same handle at JJP Out West, where you can see my ratings for every single movie that I've seen this year and will continue to do so by hook or by crook, in hell or high water. I'm going to do every movie this year and rate them on Letterboxd. Please reach out to me there if you want. And also on Facebook at Jim Pugliafco.
All right. Jim, speaking of Letterboxd, did you rate Return of the Jedi when we saw it the other night?
I didn't yet. I don't think I did, actually.
Did you?
I did. Yes, I did.
Did you?
I did.
What?
I did.
What? Okay, I'm looking this up right now. JJP Out West.
My diary.
I'm going to your diary.
Maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't.
I don't see it. Jim.
I thought I did, but I didn't.
Okay.
I thought I did, but I didn't.
All right. You better get on that.
I'm going to, though.
If you're going to make good on your Letterboxd promise.
I'm going to do it right now.
All right. Will, where can folks chat with you?
Yeah, there's a lot of places. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Whatever Cove. I'm William Lindis on Facebook. You can find me on Letterboxd. We just talked about Letterboxd. I'm there under you can either look for William Lindis or my name there is Fundamental. So either of those, you can find me. You can find me on TikTok at the Movie Bear. And if you find a Necronomicon out in the woods, just open it up, flip to the darkest, most disturbing page you can, say the words Klaatu Verada Niktu, and I'll be there.
Okay, well,
yeah, just the standard social media plug.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. I'm the Brad Harris who likely has Chub, Chaser, Bear, Otter, Dolphin, Wolf, whatever silly label friends in common with you. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd, where I, this year so far, have successfully rated every movie that I have seen. We're 5 months into the year, and I've been pretty consistent, so I'm happy about that. It's going to make my life so much easier when we get to our end of year stuff for this year, guys. I'm looking forward to not having to work so hard to put my list together. But thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, being part of the conversation this week. If you're watching through the magic of digital tape delay, you're not actually watching, you're listening in that case. We love you too. Even if you didn't get to join in the live chat, we still want to hear your thoughts on Evil Dead Rise and the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. So hit us up on our socials at MB Podcast on Twitter, Movie Bears Podcast on Facebook. Let us know what you think of those films. Happy to interact with you. Otherwise, we'll see y'all next week for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Go see the film, do your homework, come back ready to talk on Tuesday. Goodbye, everybody. Take care. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.